All right, let's try this one more time. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Leah Harlann. I am a book and reading VTuber, and I am switching the format of my reading log videos to a quarterly format because I was doing a terrible job of keeping up with them monthly. Okay, so this video will cover all of the books that I read between January and March, so quarter one of 2024. So ultimately, I didn't actually end up reading a whole lot in this first quarter, these first 3 months of 2024, because in case you missed the news, or in case this is the first time I'm posting it publicly, I moved in this time period all the way across the country, West Coast to East Coast. And the whole process happened very, very quickly. We're talking first listings that were seriously picked out for visits and tours happening in around mid-January, all the way to signing the closing documents at the end of February and moving like a day later. The movers showed up and were packed up. Were packing me up at the very end of February. So it's been very hectic, very stressful, and as a result, not a whole lot of reading has been done. I did try to get some in where I could, though, so I will talk about what I have read here. The very first thing that I completed in 2024 was The Hourglass Throne by Katie Edwards. I'm going to shift myself over a little bit here. Okay, The Hourglass Throne by Katie Edwards. This is the third and final book in the Tarot Sequence trilogy, or at least the first arc of it, that features Rune St. John and his bodyguard Brand as our primary characters. If you're not familiar with the Tarot Sequence, Rune, who is our main character, is the last child of the Fallen Sun Court. This is an urban fantasy where all of these magical people were residents of Atlantis, and then Atlantis was discovered by the human world. At some point, they went to war, and the Atlanteans survived, but kind of lost, and ended up resettling on an island off the coast of the United States after their homeland was destroyed. And the rulers of this new Atlantis are families who have courts and thrones. And all of these align with the tarot cards that most of us are familiar with. However, in universe, the tarot cards came after these people. So Rune, like I said, is the last remaining member of the Sun Court, which was destroyed prior to the events of this book. And he's had to get by doing odd jobs and operating under the protection of another very powerful family and court. So this first book is sort of about him getting entangled into a bunch of political machinations and a lot of secret plotting. And some of that comes to a head in this third and final book, which was super, super excellent. And I loved it. Definitely 5 stars. It had a new sort of plot as well. Each book is kind of building on what happened in the previous book while also adding new elements. And just really finished so strongly. And I'm really looking forward to the next arc of this world, which Katie Edwards is currently working on, and will focus on younger characters that have been introduced throughout these first 3 books. And yeah, it's really wonderful. It's super queer. I'm usually a hard sell on urban fantasy, but it was just such an excellent story, and all the characters were so amazing that I just could not. I can't believe I took so long to get to the second book after reading the first one, but I'm really glad that I did, because then I ran straight from the second into the third. And it was just an excellent time. The next book that I read, I'm not really going to say anything about because I'm still participating in the St. Martin's Press boycott. Because even now, as of April 3rd, 2024, St. Martin's Press and its imprints have not said a single thing about the Islamophobic and anti-Palestinian comments made by one of their prominent marketing employees, who is responsible in part for distributing ARCs of their books. And so they definitely have influence over which creators get books, and that's a problem based on these very bigoted views that they seem to hold. Moving on to the last thing I read in January. The last thing I read is Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. And I picked this one up because the sequel, Emberclaw, is coming out later this year. So I've been trying to intersperse dragon books into my TBR and keep up with a lot of the other ones that are not Fourth Wing. And I really, really enjoyed this one. So now I am very excited for the sequel. Dragonfall is a little different from some of the other dragon books you've been seeing probably on your timelines. Instead of being a sort of dragon rider type story, Dragonfall has dragons as intelligent characters that are... No, oh God, I've had a spill. Hold on. This, kids, is why you don't keep drinks near your computer at your desk. I mean, everything's fine. Nothing's broken. It didn't spill on my keyboard. It spilled next to my keyboard, but I will have to wash my desk mat now. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, okay, Dragonfall. Yes, Dragonfall has, it's a dual POV type story where in a world where dragons were exiled, and had their magic stolen by humans, and then they were sent off to a dying world. Very not cool of humans to do that. And but in that time, hundreds of years have passed, and humans kind of forgot that, and now they worship dragons as their gods. And the whole time, the dragons have been trying to figure out how to get back. And they've had this prophecy that a dragon will be born that will be their sort of like savior that will bring them back through the veil separating their worlds. And so our two main characters are Everin, the male dragon that is the prophesized savior, and Arcady, a wonderfully sassy street thief who has been planning this massive heist to steal a really valuable dragon artifact in order to change their circumstances, their whole life around, really, for the better. And they are thrown together by certain things that happen. And then, there's just a really, really awesome, tense relationship that kind of blooms between them. There's a lot of conflict and tension around that, secrets being kept, magic that is around, and it was honestly just a really, really good book. And the cliffhanger, oh my goodness, the way it ended was, it had me by the throat, and I cannot wait for the next book to see where things are going to go from here, because it was one of those ones that's like this huge stuff happened, and then it's like kind of an end, but not really an end. So you're like, ooh, what's going to kick off the next thing, the next big story? And so I love that. I rated it 4 stars. It took me a little bit to get through it, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the next one. Moving on to February. The first book that I read in February is probably one of my favorite reads of 2024 so far. It is The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker. This is a YA Asian fantasy that I got in my November Fairy Loot box, I think. And I read the whole thing in one day. No, I'm not kidding. One day. I was having a rough go of it, so I just kind of opened it up, meant to just check out the first couple chapters, and then I just kept going, and I kept going, and then it was past dinner time, and I hadn't moved, and I was exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, but I loved this book. It was 5 stars. Can't wait for the sequel, which is The Blood Orchid, which will come out in October of this year. The Scarlet Alchemist is about a young woman, Zilan, who wants to become a royal alchemist and work for the imperial family, because in this world, alchemy is not only real, but has also been used to synthesize a substance that is able to give people eternal youth as long as they continue consuming it. It is alchemical gold. And so Zilan needs to compete in a series of exams in order to become a royal alchemist. And she wants to do this so that she can take care of her family that she was adopted into, her aunt, uncle, and twin cousins. Her twin cousins also want to become imperial scholars through more traditional methods because they are not alchemists. So all three of them journey to the capital together and are pursuing their, separate required exams. But Zilan ends up entrenched in a lot of court politics and intrigue, and she gets tangled up with the prince. Oh, I didn't even mention the coolest part about Zilan. So, she's not even a normal alchemist. Her family has been super poor, and the way that they've been able to make money on the side to get by is Zilan uses a super illegal form of alchemy that resurrects people from the dead. And this isn't the kind of perfect resurrection that you might be used to seeing in things like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, where people cast a couple spells like boop and use up some material components and then they're back good as new. No, this is dirty, messy, kind of gross resurrection alchemy, and I loved that. Next, I read 2 novellas that were part of a trilogy. The first one is The Lies of the Ajungo, and its sequel, The Truth of the Aleke, by Moses Ose Utomi. The second one I got as a digital ARC from NetGalley, and I had tried to read the first one last year when it was still fairly new, and I had to put it down. I just wasn't getting to it, and it was due back to the library, so I let it go. But then when I got the digital ARC for the sequel, I decided this was the opportunity to come back, and I'm really glad I did because I loved not just each individual entry on its own, but both of them together, the sort of combined theme that they give. So if you can read them back to back, I really highly recommend it. It just, while everything is still super fresh from the first one, going into the second one, it makes the themes so much stronger to me. But each one is technically standalone by itself as well. You just might miss some of what the second book is getting at with some of its subtler themes if you haven't read the first one. The Lies of the Ajungo is about a 13-year-old boy named Tutu who lives in the city of Lies in the middle of the forever desert. And what has always been known is that there is no water in the city of Lies, and you cannot trust anyone outside of the city of Lies. But because there is no water, Tutu his mother is dying. And normally when each member of the city turns 13, they have to cut their tongues out and provide them as tribute to a faraway Ajungo empire in exchange for water. But Tutu decides instead to take the arduous journey and quest in agreement with the leader of the City of Lies, where he will go out and search for water to bring back to their people. And in exchange, the leader of the city will give water to his mother exclusively, like more than what they would normally be able to get for the 1-year duration that Tutu is set to go on this quest. And it's just really, really interesting, everything Tutu encounters and learns when he leaves the City of Lies. And just, it's very much told in a storytelling, folktale style. So it really swept me up in Tutu's journey once I went in with this more focused investment in it. Definitely not one, if you're distracted by wanting to be reading something else, make sure you finish that before you start this one. Because it's really immersive once you let yourself get into it. And the sequel, which takes place 500 years after the first book, takes place in the City of Truth and follows a 17-year-old Osai. And through his perspective, we get to see how the events of the first book were told and passed down in history. And it's just so, so interesting the way things were changed, omitted, edited, the way that the people in charge were very much in control of the narrative that came out of what happened in the first book. And it says something very interesting. We've seen this kind of theme come up in other media and stories recently. One example I can think of is Nimona. So if you really liked some of the backstory of Nimona, I think you should definitely read these novellas. There is a third one, though I'm not sure when it's coming out, but I am definitely going to try to get my hands on it one way or another. I don't know if that made a lot of sense. I'm sorry. I don't know how to talk too much about these novellas without spoiling too much because they are very short. They're like less than 100 pages, but they are so, so good. This folk tale style format and like just the themes it explores about, historical narratives and oral tradition and things like that. Oh, it's so good. The other things that were in February are a couple of DNFs. So I'll just go over those kind of quickly, I think. In February, I had a digital arc for A Feather So Black by Lyra Celine, and I DNF'd it at 48%. I'm actually kind of upset that I didn't like this book because I know for a fact it's in my March Fairy Loot box. It was the adult book. Anyway, very disappointed. It's a romantasy. I'm tired of romantasy books being in my Fairy Loot boxes. I know luckily the romantasy subscription line is starting in this month of April, so hopefully I better not see any more romantasy books in my combo box, okay, Fairy Loot? Okay? You made it a separate line. They better stay there, because I didn't subscribe. Blech. Blech. I didn't subscribe. I don't know. My tracking doesn't know what arm I'm using. Anyway, I did not subscribe to the romantasy books. I'm tired of romantasy books. I haven't read most of the ones that came in my previous boxes. And I wouldn't have subscribed to this one. If this was in the romantasy box, I would be glad I didn't have it. I didn't like it. I got 48% in, and nothing had really happened yet. So I started skimming ahead, and I still didn't see much happening. And this love triangle was so unappealing, and I just didn't like it. And one of the male leads was barely present, and we were almost 50% of the way through. The main character she was kind of interesting at first, but then I was just so annoyed by her behavior in regards to the two male leads that I got sick of her pretty fast. And then as much as I love Celtic fantasy settings, this one really wasn't doing it for me. It wasn't really diving much into the lore and setting and world building. It wasn't doing a lot of world building, honestly, or at least not much that was good or like sticking. So it just wasn't enough to carry me. And yeah, I DNF'd it. The other one I DNF'd is So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole. I DNF'd this at only 10%. So do not take my thoughts or feelings on it as like super legitimate criticism or anything that, I don't know. It just really wasn't what I was expecting, I think. And so I think this could still be a fantastic book for a lot of people. It still has a pretty good rating on Goodreads and stuff like that. It just didn't hit for me, and that's okay. So Let Them Burn is about a sort of chosen one, like a young girl who was a chosen one by the gods, and she had to participate in this like big war. And then the book starts after the war is over, and she is kind of not needed. Like she's now more of a figurehead than anything. And then her sister, when they go to this peace treaty with the former enemy nation, her sister ends up making a bond with an enemy dragon, which has never happened before. So of course, I saw dragons and I'm like, ooh, let's check out the dragon book. But what I didn't know, because it wasn't clear in the synopsis, is that this is an urban fantasy or like contemporary fantasy. It said Jamaican inspired, but I mean, it's like very much like modern type setting. I don't think it's our world because, there's still dragons and stuff, but I wasn't expecting urban contemporary, so I was really like weirded out. I was kind of thrown off when I was seeing all the technology and stuff that was coming up in casual use. So it just really wasn't what I was looking for. I put it down at 10%. I don't know if I'll come back to it, but like I said, take it with a grain of salt. I only made it 10%. So this could still be a phenomenal book for other people, especially if you like dragons and more interesting fantasy settings, since it is Jamaican inspired, and if you like urban fantasies. And for March, there isn't much to talk about. I read a graphic novel called The Talk by Darren Bell. This is a graphic memoir, to be more precise, and it won a Pulitzer Prize last year. So that was kind of what caught my attention when I saw it recommended at one of my libraries. And it has a really excellent rating, and I really, really like it. I'm not one who normally enjoys reading memoirs or biographies or anything like that, but I have really enjoyed graphic style memoirs with like the images, even more so when they are illustrated by the person themselves, which I've read a mix of like self-illustrated and, illustrated in partnership with others. So, but The Talk is a really excellent story about Darren's childhood all the way up into adulthood and parenthood when he has his own children, and talking about and experiencing what it's like to be a Black person and a Black man in America. And it's definitely a really, really great read if you kind of like know on a surface level, but like if you can't relate to it directly, like I can't. I am neither Black nor a man. So this was a really, really good, and I'm aware. Sorry, I'm going to backtrack. I am aware. I have been very interested in, and I have studied to a certain degree, a lot of the institutional racism and leftover infrastructures of racism that exist in our government and in our society, even though people claim that racism has been ended. And I think this is a really, really great graphic novel if you also can't, if you haven't experienced that kind of thing directly, or at least somewhat aware of it, but want to know more about what it's like to live through those kinds of experiences. And I think it depicts a lot of current events and things that have happened in recent history, but through his eyes, it even influenced my own perspective on things. So yeah, highly recommend. Great read. And then the last thing I read was Her Radiant Curse by Elizabeth Lim. This is a prequel to the Six Crimson Cranes duology. I think I waited too long to read it because I read Six Crimson Cranes, like I read the second book last year, and I just had lost a lot of the details and knowledge of that duology. So it made like a lot of the details in this book not quite connect for me. But I think it was still a pretty good story. I still enjoyed the main character because I was always interested in her backstory, what turned her into the woman that she is by the time we get to the Six Crimson Cranes duology. And so, and it was still a very good story on its own. You don't need to have read the Six Crimson Cranes duology to read this book, but I just, like, it feels like you're missing a little bit if you don't know what happened in those books, and some things probably won't resonate as much. That does cover everything I read in the first 3 months of 2024, but I'm excited to look ahead. Let me know in the comments what you read in the first 3 months, if you read anything I talked about, if you liked it, didn't like it. Tell me what you're planning to read in the upcoming months, and say hi to Cinder. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, whoops. Did I break my neck? Okay, sorry. That's all for this video, though. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Would really appreciate the extra engagement. And until next time, I hope you read something awesome. Bye-bye.